This is Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort. Good to be with you on another edition of the world's leading transit executive podcast, Transit Unplugged. Today, we head to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we talk with Scott Marr. Scott is the CEO of Tulsa Transit, who after a long career in the private sector has gone into the public sector as CEO of the transit system there, formerly known as Tulsa Transit, and while we were there, it was rebranded as MetroLink. We talked to Scott about his transit system and how he's taken the reins over the last couple years and revitalized it with a brand new BRT into planning and microtransit service coming to the city. But it's not all smooth sailing for Scott and his team. Plans to expand the BRT to historic Route 66 in time for its 100th anniversary in a couple years have hit a bump in the road. He tells us about it as a multi-million-dollar shortfall has been caused by inflation and price increases beyond their control. But undaunted, Scott and the team are rallying to seek support financially and otherwise to make it happen in time. Stay tuned for a second part of the episode from Tulsa when next week we talk with Director of Planning, Chase Phillips, about the unique placemaking that made Tulsa one of the most iconic cities in the United States. If you like what you hear and you want to see it, be sure to tune in to Transit Unplugged TV next month to take a look at this and plenty more that we filmed while there in Tulsa. Enjoy this interview with MetroLink Tulsa CEO Scott Marr. There's so many cool things in Tulsa. Thanks for having me on, inviting us into Tulsa.
Thanks for having me on the show. We're really excited.
So you and I have known of each other, not really well, but known of each other and worked for similar companies over the past 20 years or so. And now you're general manager and CEO of Tulsa Transit, which just today got a new name. Tell us about that.
Yeah, our new name is MetroLink Tulsa. It was just approved by our board a few weeks ago. It was just announced today to the SWATA conference. It was great hearing our mayor say our name, but it was important that we refresh our brand as we get further away from COVID, as we connect with our youth, our current riders, our future riders, and of course, those choice riders that we're all trying to get.
Yeah, we are here in Tulsa, not just to visit you, but we're having fun at the Southwest Transit Association with my buddy Rich Sampson. 550 people here from 8 states they represent, and really some great awards today. And your mayor spoke, and he's very excited. Scott, one of the things that really impressed me about his leadership is he seems to be very practical, but very pro-transit.
Absolutely. And, he's just such a great speaker. I'm glad I didn't have to follow him. I went before him. But he's been a huge advocate for public transportation and continues to do so in his last year as he's not seeking re-election. But we are proud to have him as our mayor, and we will miss him dearly.
Tell us about your system. Give us an overall scope.
Yeah, so we have 65 fixed route buses, 54 paratransit and microtransit vehicles, 24 fixed routes. We have 4 microtransit zones during the day, 6 at night.
More at night because there's less fixed route buses going around, or what?
There is, but it replaced an underperforming deviated fixed route service.
Oh, okay.
So to cover the whole city on what those routes were running, we wanted to give our customers better service than what they were getting before. And now the service has doubled the ridership of those routes when they were previously running. So we're excited.
So you started microtransit service to replace some routes that were underperforming, and you got twice as many people riding microtransit than you did on the bus?
That's correct.
What kind of vehicles are you using?
We're using Voyagers, we're using Cutaways, but it's important to have 2 vehicles in each zone, one that is ADA accessible and one that also has a bike rack for our customers.
Tell us about, you mentioned that the mayor announced the new name today, and you had a great video, by the way, which we'll show some clips of, because concurrent with this audio podcast, we're here filming a television show for Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube. So if you like what Scott and I are talking about, make sure you take a look at our video show, Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube, and see it yourself. But tell us about the decision behind renaming the system and how you came up with the name. And you have multiple names for multiple services, right?
That's correct. So, I just really thought 2 years ago when I took over this position, it was time to refresh our brand. We've been Tulsa Transit since 1980. Same look, same design. It was time to refresh our brand. So MetroLink Tulsa, a royal blue, a yellow, similar to DART. DART is our sister company, but we're not exactly like DART. Link Assist for our paratransit, and of course MicroLink for our microtransit. It was time to change, and our team is excited to embrace this change. We hope the public the same, that they'll embrace this change as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, they have with your microtransit, it sounds like. And you told me before that you're thinking about merging micro with para?
That's correct. We want to start commingling. When you start commingling, we realize in paratransit, we have a lot of cancellations and no-shows throughout the day that leave gaps in routes. Why not use those gaps to fill microtransit trips? It'll reduce the cost. And we know paratransit is the most expensive service that we have. So if we increase our ridership or our productivity, microtransit is currently running 3.75 to 4.25
Trips per hour.
trips per hour, passengers on the vehicle per hour. If we can get, when we start commingling, that same type of productivity, it'll reduce our costs and use those funds elsewhere.
Absolutely. That's an amazing thing. And I know the places like Seattle and other cities are looking at doing just that because during the pandemic, microtransit was the hottest new trend. And now that the funds are running out, the COVID relief funds from Washington, people are looking at ways to maybe conserve on costs. If you can figure out a way to do it on a cheaper per passenger, but they get individualized service, I mean, that's a win-win, isn't it?
It is. And we've had so much success with our microtransit. We're starting to see other organizations come to Tulsa to see how we're doing it.
Really?
So we're glad to be partners with those other organizations so we can help them reduce their costs like we reduce ours.
That's great. Tulsa is a great town. I mean, I've never been here before this visit. Like I said, the only thing I really knew about it was the praying hands at ORU, but there's so many cool things here. Tell us some about how big Tulsa is and what some of the features are of this place.
Yeah, so there's 400,000 people, 187 square miles. A lot of people don't realize Route 66 was born in Tulsa.
Wow.
It was actually born in Tulsa. Yeah. And now we have a BRT that we're building up for the 100-year anniversary in 2026. We're building a BRT on Route 66 at a 20-minute frequency. It'll go from east to west, west to east, and we're excited because we think it'll have just as much success as our current BRT.
Yeah, tell us that we just got off the BRT line. We were riding it from the convention center out to ORU. Tell us about that, the name of the service, how you came up with that. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, so Propeller was a company that we used for the branding. It is called the Aero. That is our BRT service. AERO.
Right.
A little different than what you may think, AROW.
Right.
But that service, that BRT, is over a third of our ridership monthly. It's been a huge success. The economic development on that route has just been amazing. Our customers love it. The buses are branded. They look different than anything else. And even with our new rebranding, we will not change the Aero because it's already branded the way it is.
And so Route 66, or Route 66, I guess is how people normally say it, is really what they call America's Main Street. And it's a central feature of a lot of part of the central part of America. It goes across, like from Chicago all the way across the country to the West Coast. And this is like the heart of it here, isn't it?
It is. It was born here. You heard our mayor mention it earlier this morning. My parents drove it when I was a kid.
Sure.
I probably came through Tulsa. Just don't remember it. But what a great time for the 100-year anniversary in 2 years that we embrace that anniversary. We put that BRT on that line. And the city of Tulsa is just so excited to celebrate that time.
Yeah, and you got 45 stations, 45 stops?
So 44 stations, 320,000 each.
Okay.
A little expensive, but
where are you getting the money?
FTA.
Okay.
We hope to get it from the FTA. We currently have a funding gap, a $15 million funding gap, but that's nobody's fault other than inflation and the rising costs. And supplies.
Things are so expensive now, aren't they? But I got to tell you, last night at the hotel, 4 of us had a meal and a drink, and it was $80. I could not believe it. I was like,
is that cheap?
That's very cheap.
Well, you live in Maryland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, that would be me going out for
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So it's a little bit, the cost of living here maybe is a little bit lower, but the cost of those assets I know are still very expensive. So the BRT line is coming. Tell us a little bit more about the town of Tulsa. Let's keep going on. There's so many neat things here. You have an Art Deco district, and tell us about all the kind of interesting facets here.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that the Outsiders movie was made here in Tulsa. The house still stands. It's a place that people go to and see and check out. A student in Tulsa wrote the Outsiders book that eventually became a
Francis
movie.
Ford Coppola and
it's
all
just
those guys,
amazing that, it's just, we're so excited about that because so many actors and actresses, that
they
was
all
one
got
of
their start there.
That was their start.
The Brat Pack got started there. Rob Lowe and the boys. Yeah.
Yeah. So super exciting. Tulsa's an old oil town. probably fell backwards a little bit in the 80s and 90s, but it's really starting to bounce back with our city leaders. We have the Gathering Place off Riverside that is a great family-oriented location.
Let's talk about that for 1 minute. I thought that was so interesting when your mayor was talking to us this morning and said, basically in America, because of digitalization, we almost have a pandemic of loneliness. I mean, I've read about that. They've actually called it that. People don't connect anymore. So you all went out and raised money from the private sector, millions of dollars, and built what's called the Gathering Place.
Gathering Place is an amazing place to take your kids. You can just go out there and walk. You can play basketball. They have basketball courts, tennis courts.
He said it's like Disneyland had a baby.
It's like Disney. That was hilarious when he said that. But yeah, it's an amazing. We do Dump the Pump there. We did Dump the Pump. National Dump the Pump Day in June.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Where we encourage
bikes and all that.
We encourage people to dump the pump, park your cars, and ride public transportation. We do free fares on that day. That's been another.
That's great. The BRT lines, one more thing about them I wanted to mention was the public support for them. Tell us about the referendums you had here and what kind of support you had, because they had to go to the voters.
Yeah, so 2016, the vision tax was approved 2/3, 2-1 for the approval of that. Our public here in Tulsa, they have really embraced public transportation and have voted yes on measures to help us fund that. Yes, we do currently have a funding gap, but again, that's due to rising costs and supply chain issues. So our mayor's been amazing, working with this team at MetroLink Tulsa.
MetroLink Tulsa.
To help us work through some of that. We are applying for a raise grant that's due at the end of this month. And the FTA knows that we are in a bind here with this current funding gap. And they know the 100-year anniversary is coming up. So we're hoping to hear good news when the announcements are made.
We're driving around town right now, and neither you or I are driving.
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah. But we're in the backseat talking. I wanted to talk about fueling. So, on our show, we've done a lot of discussion lately on various types of new fuels that are lower sulfur, lower emission. So traditionally, American Transit worked on diesel buses. And then we went to something called clean diesel. And now there's 3 or 4 other new sources of energy. One of them that my buddy Kevin Quinn up in Vancouver is going to almost like I don't want to say vegetable oil, but it's some kind of natural-based fuel like that. Then you've got battery electric buses, which in cold weather climates this winter, there was a lot of challenges for them in Canada, especially. Some of the leaders up there told me, we were just in Edmonton, and I talked to other leaders near Toronto. They were concerned about that. Then there's this all new fuel. I mean, it's been around a while, right? But new for buses of hydrogen fuel. There's a hydrogen council. My buddy Doran Barnes in California and Kirk Conrad are all about hydrogen. But there's a fuel that's been around for a long time in places like Fort Worth and Tulsa that's really clean. And it's CNG, compressed natural gas. So tell me about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, out of our 119 vehicles, 84 of them are CNG. We have 4 electric and we have 4 diesel. The rest are unleaded gas, and most of those are the paratransit. We have no big buses that are regular gas. CNG buses we live on top of CNG. We were talking about it earlier, Paul, where there's enough CNG to outlast our lifetime, our kids' lifetime, and their kids' lifetime.
We're driving right through it right now, I think. We're right by the train lines with all the cars over there, and it looks like the refineries are over there.
We have good news, though. We have 4 diesel buses that'll be retired in June when we get our 7 new CNG buses from Gillig.
They're going to be electric, right? Gilligs are electric, or they CNG?
So we got CNG coming this year, and then we have 7 electric coming next year.
All right. So the CNG works for you?
Yeah, we love CNG. My director of maintenance is pro CNG. We know that there's been cases out there that CNG is even cleaner than electric.
Really?
So we're excited with the CNG. We live on top of it here in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
We want to continue to use CNG.
Last question for this segment would be, so congratulations.
Thank you.
You just finished your 2nd year, almost to the day today.
Yes.
And you announced your new name of the service today with the mayor by your side. Awesome. And you just got a big contract renewal. You're like a coach, on the football team. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the board just approved on Thursday. I got a new 8-year contract, 4-year base with 2 2-year extensions. So that'll keep me here for another 8 years. But Paul, it's not about this contract. It's about the next one after that to get me to the retirement age. But I'm excited.
Just like a football coach. Yeah.
I'm excited to know that I've been here 2 years and I got another 8 years here to work with this amazing team. Yeah, thank you.
And so, what's your vision? I'm sure you had to sell them your vision. What's your vision for the system?
Yeah, so my vision, and it's not, and I like to tell my team, this is not Scott Marr Transit. This is all of us putting our heads together to figure out what's best for our customers. We want to build a box. We want to build a box of core fixed route service and use microtransit to feed that box. Now, microtransit's been a huge hit here, and I don't think we have even touched what microtransit's going to be in Tulsa.
Wow. And then expand the BRT, right?
Expand the BRT in 2 years after we get that funding, and then commingling, having those paratransit trips switch to the microtransit.
That's a great vision. I think you're going to succeed, my friend.
I hope so.
Yeah. Scott, so you've been here 2 years. What did you do prior to this job?
Yeah, so going all the way back 28 years ago in 1996, I was a fixed route bus driver. It was the first time I ever got my CDL license. I drove for about 6 months, but they loved the fact that I was prior military, so I moved up really quickly as a road supervisor. Did that for about 10 or 12 years, and then I got hired by MV Transportation, the private contractor, as a project manager in Lawrence, Kansas.
So that's when I think I remember you. Was there. And weren't you kind of like a fix-it guy for us?
I was. I was single at the time. I had a car, 4 boxes. It was easy for me to move around. So whenever there was an opportunity, I would always knock at the door and say, hey, I'm available. Well, I had some success in the first 2 locations I went to that I fixed. So I continue to move around a lot. I think in about 15 years, I moved around 13 times.
Wow. So about a year at a spot.
Year and a
Short-term
half.
assignments. And what would you do? Go in and be a general manager or an ops manager or what?
No, I was actually the general manager, but I'd go in there and I would identify what wasn't working. And usually, all of us that have been in the business like yourself, those things stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, that's right.
So fixing
it doesn't take long, does it?
No, it doesn't take long. But so fixing that and guiding them, at the end of the day, you have to get people to trust in you. And you can only get that to be accomplished by building relationships. And building those relationships, getting people to believe in what you're trying to sell and getting them to perform.
You worked for MV for a number of years, moving around the country as a general manager, kind of fixing up the operations, fixing up the finance, fixing up administrative, fixing up, I'm sure, all kinds of stuff, right? There's one big problem that you see in transit agencies across America now that you've got a solution for.
It's easy to talk about safety because that's what really drives the bottom line.
Okay.
But usually it's poor management. It's really about, we have managers that have been around this business that come in at 10 a.m. and leave at 3. Well, how can you expect your employees to respect you? You really got to dig in. You need to be here during pullout. You need to be here when they get back. Those are the types of things that allow you to build those relationships and get them to buy in what you're trying to sell, and they will perform. Happy employees perform well.
And then how'd you end up here? So you did that for a while, and then what happened?
Yeah, so still on the private side, I was working in Brooklyn, New York, driving 2 to 4 hours each way because I lived in New Jersey, and I got a phone call from Tulsa Transit saying, hey, would you like to come back and work for First Transit? And it wasn't right away that I thought, I'd already been here twice, but it was that last 4-hour drive home where I said, you know what, let's go back to Tulsa where my wife is from.
Okay.
It's a great opportunity. But I'll be honest with you, Paul, when I came back to First Transit, I had my eye on the prize, and that was this position. So I stayed
for the city.
To work for MTTA, Tulsa Transit. Okay. So I stayed with First Transit for 2 years. This position opened up, and I seized the moment. And here we are 2 years later. We're having great success. But I'm always going to deflect and say, if it wasn't for the strong team I have, I'd never be successful.
Yeah. And so the game plan for you, as we talked about when we were riding on your BRT, kind of spell it out one more time. What's your vision for the next 4 years?
Yeah, so we're working on a raise grant that's due later this month to fill in the funding gap that we currently have on Route 66, where we'll have 9 CNG buses on there. It doesn't really work for the electric buses on there. It's just too long of a route. But in the next 4 years, we hope to have that accomplished. The 100-year anniversary for Route 66 is in 2 years. It's possible we could have that ready by then.
That's great. So you'll have a BRT line with 44 stations along there, your second BRT line, and then your microtransit.
Microtransit just continues to exceed expectations and continue to grow. And I see that today we have 4 daytime routes, or zones, I should say. We'll probably have 10 in the next couple of years. It continues to grow, and the ridership is just blowing up. Good problem to have is what I tell my team.
There you go. Well, Scott, I'm very impressed with your operation, with your leadership, with the team you've assembled here. I think you are primed and ready to go.
Appreciate you, Paul. Thanks for coming.
Hi, this is Tris Hussey, editor of the Transit Unplugged podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode with our special guest, Scott Marr. Now, as Paul said in the opening, next week we stay in Tulsa with the Director of Planning, Chase Phillips. showing Paul around their iconic downtown and its amazing Art Deco architecture. Hey, did you know transitunplugged.com is the hub for everything Transit Unplugged? You can connect with us on social media, subscribe to the newsletter, catch up on podcast episodes, and episodes of Transit Unplugged TV. Give a visit today and connect with us on social media. Say hi, introduce yourself. We'd love to hear from all of our fans about what they think about the show and maybe some ideas for guests in the future. If you have a question, comment, or would like to be a guest on the show, you can email us anytime at info@transitunplugged.com. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people. And at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So, until next week, ride safe and ride happy.